Good afternoon and aloha, everyone. My name is Chuck Parker. I'm the Vice President of Content here at PBS Hawaii. Thank you for joining this afternoon for this exclusive event featuring a sneak preview of the film you just watched. This is Kohala. The episode you saw today premieres on our broadcast. That's tomorrow, March 28th at 8:30 p.m., but it'll also be available on our YouTube channel at PBS Hawaii and on our website at pbshawaii.org. On your screen is a QR code. Please consider a gift to PBS Hawaii. Thanks to viewers like you, we can continue providing these events, like these free screenings of this great film and so on. So joining me for our Q&A session this afternoon is producer Jocelyn Manuel, editor Bryan Campbell, and our featured guest, Joseph Carvalho. And feel free to submit your questions. We'll get to many of those as we can. We have a couple of comments I want to get to first before we go into the questions, and I want to read this to you folks. So Diana Lee, from Diana Lee. My mother is 99 years old. She was born in Hawaii in 1924 and graduated from Kohala High. She'll watch tomorrow night when it premieres on the broadcast. Melvin Jadulang, just putting it out there, he says, Halaula kid here living in Baltimore City. Mahalo for sharing this with us tonight, PBS. We're happy to do that. And I'm going to start with you, Jocelyn. Just the inspiration for this great film, tell us how the genesis, how this started.
Well, first of all, on behalf of everybody who's worked on this project and all of Kohala, mahalo to PBS Hawaii for airing this. We are so honored and grateful to be able to share our stories with the world, really. When I've watched this film so many times, and when it gets to that end part with Uncle Fred Cachola, I always get choked up, and he never got to see the final product. This underscores the reason why my son Lucas and I started this project, is because we have all of these kapuna with so much wisdom and knowledge to share. And I want to be able to capture as many of those stories as possible. My own story is that my dad, Romualdo Manuel, was born in the Philippines in 1910, and he came over to Hawaii in 1929 on a boat to work in the sugar plantations. And when I was growing up, I was honestly not that interested in learning about the history, as I'm sure a lot of other folks are, at that age are not that interested. And he passed away about 20 years ago now. And with him went all of the stories. I moved away for college. I live in the mainland now. And so starting this project was really essentially capturing my mom's voice and stories, because I never was able to do that with my father. And it was a way for me to reconnect with my culture and heritage, and to help my kids also understand where I came from and what their heritage is. So we started innocently enough, just recording my mom talking story at the dinner table with our phones, so getting the audio. My son Lucas got into film school at NYU, and so I said, Lucas, bring home your gear. We're going to video record grandma. The the ulterior motive I had, though, was that my mom has this cascaron recipe. Cascaron is this Filipino dessert that she has never shared with anybody except for my daughter Kaya. And so secretly I was trying to tape that, but I've yet to get that recipe. But we started recording her stories, and I started posting it on the Facebook groups. I got some wonderful comments back saying you should interview so and this person and that person. So that really started it all. We started collecting more stories in December of 2021 when we were back home. But as you know, it was the height of the pandemic, and we didn't collect very many stories because people were afraid to, be because of COVID, they were afraid to be out in public. So we got our opportunity to record more stories at the Kohala reunion in 2022. The Kohala reunion is a celebration that happens every 5 years in our community. They hadn't had one since the pandemic, so there were a lot of people there. And Auntie Kathy Matsuda, who organizes the Kohala reunion, we asked her if we could set up some space to film people, film more stories there, and she said absolutely. So over the course of 2 days, over that 4th of July weekend, Lucas and his friend Tommy recorded almost 20 interviews over the course of 2 days. And from that, we were able to start this project. And this is where when Bryan Campbell entered the picture.
Well, Bryan, that's a cue. I mean, so here you get all these there's all these interviews that Jocelyn's son and his friend gets, and all these other things they've gathered, and they say, here, do your magic, create. So talk us through that process.
Yeah, so initially Jocelyn reached out because I teach at Hawaii Community College in Hilo and wanted some help with some of my students kind of to get involved in the editing project. So it's always been, and one of the really cool things about this project is that it's always been about connecting youth to the stories of these kapuna and kind of getting them engaged as well. So whether it's Jocelyn's son Lucas or whether it's kind of my students, now we're working on a program with high schoolers and middle schoolers up in Kohala. But yeah, they handed over a bunch of material. Um, my students worked with it. They crafted several of the little short snippets, which you can see online. And then basically the ask for me was to sort of put it together into a big final film, which was kind of challenging. I'd never been to Kohala at this point. I live in a different part of the island. And so I just sort of sat down and listened to the stories, and listened to Uncle Joe and Uncle Fred and everybody. And what really stuck out to me was just sort of a shared story, a shared experience through all of them. Everyone was sort of telling the same story, the same Kohala story. And so, as a filmmaker, it was my job to just kind of step back and kind of like put it together and let them tell it. And I've been so happy with the response that we've gotten so far.
Well, I wanted to share another comment here from Anna Halia. So important to cherish this wisdom, and project like yours inspired to keep it alive. So, coming out of that, I want to hear from you, Joe Carvalho. You're part of the film. You're part of Kohala. You're part of the history. Share your thoughts on the film and the effort to keep these stories going.
Well, first, I really want to thank Jocelyn for getting this project going because getting up in age now, I really want to make sure that our era of people can share how we grew up in Kohala, what our values are, and the unique thing about being in a plantation with a lot of immigrants intermingling with each other and all going to a same school, learning English instead of our uh, home languages. But I think Kohala is such a unique place because of that, and I guess all the plantation towns are the same thing. And one of the great things about growing up in Kohala was the different camps that we had. Camp 17, Camp 5, and these were all like different people, immigrants that lived in there. So yeah, it was a unique way, and thank you, Jocelyn, for letting us share our stories.
Well, there's another comment here from Carl Sisby. Really nice to create and broadcast oral histories like this. He says he lives in Southern California, can't get PBS Hawaii on TV, so it's great to have an opportunity to see this show. So, Carl, for you, it will be on our YouTube page going forward after once it's broadcast tomorrow night. So you can watch it again, over and over again. You can share it, let people know about it. He says he was also struck by how universally the values and mo'olelo of those interviewed were, which is so true, absolutely. And I have another question here from Heather Fryer, who is actually another filmmaker who we worked with before. This is to you, Jocelyn, are there others that you wanted to keep in the film and had to not include because of time, or weren't able to get to them? How did that process work?
I'm going to answer this question with Bryan because we had a lot of discussion around what the storyline would be. And I have to say that really the final product is Bryan's doing. It's Bryan's magic. I had an outline for the film in my head, and he just took it to the next level and made it the beautiful film that it is. So thank you, Bryan, for partnering with me on all of this. Yeah, Bryan as a filmmaker had an opinion about the storyline that should be told. And there were a lot of stories that came out of the interviews, many of which you can see on our website, kohalaoralhistoryproject.com. This is just a small portion of the over 200 video clips that ended up being part of this project. So yes, there were themes that we thought we might want to delve into deeper later, like why the sugar plantation closed down and the implications, the impact it had on the community. There were a lot of stories around what happened afterwards. And so, Bryan, if you want to share some of the themes that we talked about.
Yeah, so I think, in a lot of ways, it's sort of like gardening a little bit, right? Like there's so many stories that they're all part of the same plant, they're all part of the same story, but sometimes, one goes a little too long. Like, I know Jeff Coakley tells a really great story about kind of a guy driving down the road. He kind of passes him, doesn't really think anything about it, and then he sees him again in a grocery store, and the guy's like, "Did I offend you?" And Jeff's like, "No, I don't know what. Why do you think I offended you?" He's like, "I waved at you, and you didn't wave back, right?" And it's like things like that where there's specific things about people's opinions about um, the plantation closing down and things like this. And I think we could really easily zoom in on kind of one thing or another. But I think for this one, we wanted it to tell kind of a very full story to include as many voices as we could and sort of not just kind of zone in on one person's experience over the other to kind of create this sort of tapestry of experiences to sort of have that be the voice of Kohala rather than one or two main storytellers.
We have another question here, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot per se, but Cindy Duggar, I hope I pronounced your name correctly in one of those tries there. She says there was an impactful quote about action and vision. Could you share that person's name?
David Fuertes. And he was my 8th grade agriculture teacher. And I was telling Chuck while we were waiting for the film to end that he taught me about leadership growing up. And I was in the Future Farmers of America. He was the advisor there, and he's very involved in the community. And so I still look at him as the person who helped shape me.
And he's a storyteller who, and I know Chuck, you're a filmmaker and other filmmakers out there. David Fuertes speaks in sound bites. He is the easiest person to edit. And so lots of good wisdom from Uncle Dave.
Well, we've kind of touched on this through all of your comments so far, but I want to go into it a little more. The importance of preserving these stories from these people. Talk about that. Why do we want to do that? Why do we want to save them? What does that mean for them and for the future?
Uncle Joe, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. Can I? Yeah. But growing up here, it seems like we're so isolated. And one of the things is I wanted to convey my children were born on the Maine course. We grew up there. So my grandchildren now, in fact, the 17-year-old is trying to get more into her Hawaiian culture side. So she's going to be coming home this summer to get more involved in the community to see how things are or were when I was growing up, and to know more about the Hawaiian culture and about the Kohala culture. And getting this film from everybody, getting the comments from everybody really preserves what we know about Kohala. And hopefully it's like a lesson for everybody. And besides historical, it's, it's sort of say, hey, this is the way humans are.
What you read in the history books is what we learn in school. The oral histories that we've been collecting round out the history that we learn. It's these oral histories, these oral testimonies that really add color to the history that we read about in the history books. And for me, it's been a way to connect to my heritage. A lot of traditions are oral; they're not written down, and that's very much still a part of history and should be accounted for.
You mentioned one of the ways to start the inspiration was to get your mom's recipe for one thing, but a little beyond that as well. But so there's an obvious family connection there. But in watching the film and talking with you over the past few months as we've got to this point, family kind of runs all the way through. Not just the film, but the community, and that one of the feelings I got, and when I first saw this, it was like an instant yes, we have to share this film with everyone because of that element included. So talk about that and the family connection.
Yeah, I was one of our advisors on the project is Nicole Garcia of the Honoka'a Heritage Center, and we were talking about gathering these stories from the plantation days. And we were talking about how the story of the plantation closures is really a story about resilience and a story about how communities come together to overcome these kinds of challenges and hardships. If you look at the stories that were shared in the film, it wasn't just about the closure of the plantations. I mean, that community bonding feeling, helping each other is, from the very beginning of Kohala's history, it has been there. And so family definitely is part of all of that.
And Joe, you had mentioned
Yeah.
in the film some of that as well, but I want to bring up one story that you talked about in the film that we talked about it before this session this afternoon. The bus ride, when you sharing the gum, and
Well,
that
if I
was
can
part of
continue there.
Kohala. Yeah, please go on.
Yeah. So what happens is that you have to share whatever you have, physically whatever you had, especially with food. So if you couldn't share to everybody, you would just keep it to yourself or share it, give it away, and you don't get anything. I mean, because it was always giving. Everybody was part of a family. I mean, the people you grew up with, your family, other people in the community, other people in the camps, other people in the schools. You had a real close family type, and then you have this other kind of family and this other kind of family. So, but you were all joined in like a common good, like to help each other.
So you had said, at some point you left for a while, but you're back. So you're back in Kohala. You're back to your roots, and did it draw you back? Was that always the goal to go back to Kohala?
It was always, I brought my children home as often as possible. My wife and I. Marsha's my classmate. We grew up together, and we wanted our children to know our family. So we would come home the 1 to 2 weeks to, they meet their cousins and the uncles and the aunties. So this is like, it went on for like every 2 or 3 years. So they would be really familiar with Kohala and the friends we grew up with, especially. Um, uh, so that kept the families together. And why did I come back? So, in one reason, every time I left here, it was very hard to leave. And then even after Marsha and I retired, we would, we come home for 2 weeks. Geez, and then we have to go back. So it was very difficult. And then this thing came up where her mom needed help at home. So we said, hey, we'll come home and take care of her. And then we decided, say, why don't we just stay here now? We retired. And so that's what happened. And then I got involved in the community kind of, activism stuff, keeping Kohala Kohala.
Cool. We got
And
another
that's
comment
how.
here from Christine Onaga. It's a question, actually. She's living in the Midwest, wants to know what happened to Kohala kimchi and Holy Bakery apple pies. Obviously, a Kohala knowledgeable person. And Yvonne Leiser, I hope I pronounced that correctly. What a privilege it was to have recently lived in this community. No one appreciates many of these people. Another comment, keep them coming. Carla Oriana, these stories are essential to preserve for the future of Kohala for others to appreciate and respect as it continues to change and as everything does. I love the aloha of Kohala. We mustn't lose it. And that was actually leads to another question I had. This is really for you, Joe. The change. You were there. Early in your life, you left for a while, and you came back. The change. How much change? And talk about that if you can.
The Kohala area was the same. That's what I loved
Okay.
about it. Yeah, it was still the same. People were sort of the same. But with the whole now it was the plantation people now working at the hotels. It was the people itself was not the same, and we had a lot of influx of new people here. So it sort of changed the dynamics in Kohala. But as far as I don't want to say local, but the plantation era type people sort of kept the same values, and so that was the changes I saw there. Working in a different area changed how people live. Um, that's the local people.
There's another comment from Josette M. Love seeing my grandpa's building with the Batmobile in the front.
That was the game room. That was the old game room.
Oh, no.
Go play video games over there.
That's cool. So I wanted to extend this. So, Bryan, you mentioned something earlier, and I was going to say this. You're not only a film editor, but you're also an educator, and you work at the Hawaii Community College there in Hilo. So, talk a little bit about what you're doing with students, since this film started going forward, and how you're helping young filmmakers, extend, learn skills and extend what was started with this.
Sure. So this is a very exciting thing. We started a club after school. We meet once a week, and basically, we don't call it a class. It's definitely a club, and we're really getting the students kind of involved in the process. And so we're talking to them about oral history processes, like how to establish themes, how to develop good interview questions, open-ended questions, right? Like not yes, no, things that go in deep, trying to get at some of those hidden stories. And for people who, may not be necessarily as comfortable as Joe is with kind of, or some of the other people being on camera. Some people are a little more shy. And so far, we've recorded about 10 so far. We have 4 students who may be watching this. So if you guys are, hey, I'll see you soon, and we'll be getting back to work editing. But they are the ones who've been setting up the cameras. They've been asking the questions, and now we're making short documentaries. We're making short little films, kind of little slices, just like This is Kohala. Of some of these stories, and just kind of getting the keiki interacting with the stories of the kupuna. I think it's such a powerful thing.
And Chuck, if I can add, this would not have been possible without the support from the Hawaii
Yes.
Council for the Humanities, Hawaii Community Foundation, the Dorrance Family Foundation, and the Atherton Family Foundation. Councilwoman Cindy Evans also contributed, and we have had a lot of donations from our family and friends to be able to launch this school program because equipment costs some money. So we're happy that we get to share this with the younger generation and creating more oral history stories. We're going to be able to continue this into the fall and hopefully next year as well.
and
Well,
a
that's great.
mood.
I sense another film coming, and so that door is open. Keep us in
So
mind.
Brian, do you have students from Kohala?
Yeah, so they're all students from Kohala, two middle schoolers and two high schoolers. One student actually interviewed his father for the project.
We're working
Very
with
good.
Jonelle Kainoa and her Kohala Unupa'a project, which is all about exposing the students to the Hawaiian culture.
That's great. We have another comment here from, and I'm assuming this is a handle of Bulmer 40. Mahalo, Jocelyn and team. Now, not to put anybody in the spot, but we'll go with this. If you can suggest who I can contact regarding residents of Kohala before the plantations, great-great-grandparents were born in Niuli'i in the 1850s. So perhaps that's another project to consider going forward. I have a question. I mean, so for each of you, but Jocelyn, we'll start with you. Was there a favorite part of this project that for you that jumps up?
I loved all of the stories for one, but I think for me, sitting down with Lucas and his friend Tommy, who was helping with the filming, after every day of filming, they were spent. It was 6 hours every day filming, Tommy holding the boom mic without a stand. So we'd sit at dinner and I'd ask them, what stories did you hear? What were the interviews like? And they would light up and tell me all of these wonderful stories that they collected. Deep down inside, that made me feel just so warm because I moved away to the mainland. And I always wondered whether my kids would understand what it meant to grow up and live in Kohala, because we would only go back once a year, just like Joe and his family going back, once or twice a year. And they got it, and they got excited about it, and they wanted to learn more. And that was really heartwarming for me, to the point where Lucas is working on his senior year project now for school, and he's going to film his project in Kohala to tell the story of what he knows about Kohala. So that's so heartwarming to me.
That's great. That's a great story.
Excellent.
Brian, any favorite parts?
Yeah, I mean, I love, I'm an editor at heart, so I love the creation process of things. But I think my favorite single moment would actually be at a screening that we had in Kohala. I think right around the 4th of July. It was the first public screening of the film. I won't name any names, but I was sitting near several of the kapuna who were in the film, and this was actually my first time visiting Kohala, and so I was, very nervous. I was really concerned, wanting to make sure I got everything right, and kind of looking over at them after the film, and kind of him turning to his family and just kind of being like pointing up at the screen. That's how it was. That to me was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I was
That's
able to
great.
do it. So.
Joe, do you want to weigh in?
This is just, I'm so happy that I was able to participate in this, because at the beginning I was so reluctant, but then I think I was the last person during the reunion, and Lucas helped, I helped him set up the place, and I said, oh, this is very professional. It's not just people with a person with a camera. So then I got into it, I guess. But thank you very much. I really think this is so important for Kohala and the family.
I have another comment here from someone named Mike Chun. He says, this film makes me want to know more about this special place, to gain a deeper knowledge of the people in place. With that, I think, Jocelyn and Brian, you folks, I would venture to say you achieved your goals. If someone makes that kind of comment, after watching it, that's a congratulations. And I offer that as well. We are coming down to the end of our Q&A session, so I'm going to ask each of you for maybe some final thoughts. But one thing I want to, this from Charles Bowler, who watches a lot of our films here. Thanks to everyone involved for creating such a wonderful, historically significant program, more, exclamation point, exclamation point. So thank you, Charles, for that. So anyway, we'll go around the room again, so to speak. And Jocelyn, if you want to give us some final thoughts.
Oral history and community are one and the same to me, and I'm glad that we were able to do this project. And I just want to echo what Marcelo Paget said in his interview. Go and collect those stories. Turn on the recorder on your phone and record the stories of your kapuna.
I agree with that. Yes, please go out and see the Harry Chains and the Marlene Chains, Ernie Powell. Please, you see those people.
Right.
To Charles's comment, yeah, I think there is more to come. We're interviewing more people with each interview we get, more stories come, and part of this project is not just oral history, but also making it accessible through things like filmmaking and projects with the student filmmakers. So more to come for sure.
Well, thank you for that. And again, like I said earlier, the door's open over here for more films. So just keep us in mind. We would love to, share future projects with as many people as we can. So for those of you out there watching, this concludes our panel discussion. Thanks for everybody to spending your afternoon with us. Sorry we didn't get to all the questions or comments, but thank you for those who sent some in. PBS Hawaiʻi will be sending you an audience survey through the email for your feedback on today's event. This helps our team continue to improve our screenings. If you have a moment, please offer your insight to help us do that. Also on your screen, as I mentioned earlier, is a QR code. Please consider a gift to PBS Hawaiʻi. Thanks, folks, for doing that. We can continue to provide these kind of free virtual screenings and other events. To donate, simply scan the code with your phone. It will take you directly to the donate page on our website. The episode you saw today premieres tomorrow night on our broadcast. It's March 28th, Thursday, March 28th at 8:30 p.m. It'll also be on Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m. if you missed that and you don't have a DVR. But it's also on our YouTube page at PBS Hawaiʻi and our website at pbshawaiʻi.org. So on behalf of Jocelyn, Bryan, and Joe and PBS Hawaiʻi, mahalo and aloha to everyone. Take care.
Thank you.